How do you look back on your music career, and would you ever...
I was the best. No,
I'm the best white rapper turned actor.
I'm the realest rapper ever. I'm the realest white rapper. Or not to know that Eminem would come, shortly after.
I've been writing lyrics since I was like 14 years old, and just the more I wrote, the better I kept getting at it.
Other than that, people are gonna pass judgment. They're gonna say what they wanna say, and they're gonna make their own conclusions or whatever.
Welcome to the Gossip Channel. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We're growing with you and because of you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Once we hit that milestone, a special prize will be waiting for you. Stay tuned. And now, let's get into the topic. Before Hollywood turned him into an A-lister, Mark Wahlberg was still Marky Mark, a hot-tempered rapper with a sketchy past and a serious chip on his shoulder. And before Eminem was crowned the GOAT, he was already known as a ruthless lyrical sniper out of Detroit. No filter, no fear, and zero tolerance for fake industry egos. So when the two first crossed paths at MTV, sparks flew instantly. Mark sized him up, but M didn't flinch for a second, and that stare down lit the fuse. What went down wasn't just some petty back and forth. It turned into a cold war between two men from totally different worlds, clashing histories and opposite coasts. This is the untold story of a beef that never really died. Quiet jabs, real tension, and shadows from their past that kept the divide wide open. When Eminem took it personal, it wasn't some rap battle. It wasn't just a diss track. It was a moment so awkward, so raw, it spiraled into years of static that nearly exploded off camera. Truth is, this feud didn't start with music. It started with straight-up ego. Back in the early 2000s, inside MTV studios, both men were on the come-up, but from opposite universes. Eminem, the Detroit battle-hardened rapper, was rewriting the rules of what it meant to be a white MC in a black-dominated game. No softness, no costumes, no Hollywood grin, just raw grit and no tolerance for fakes. Mark Wahlberg, meanwhile, had already flipped from Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch to shiny blockbuster star, trying to bury that street kid past. The violent streak, the gang ties, the assault charges, even those ugly hate crime headlines. But M never forgot. So when Wahlberg strolled up with cameras rolling, reaching out like they were buddies, Eminem hit him cold. No dap, no grin, just straight ice on live TV. That deadpan rejection, it turned every head in the room. Behind the cameras, things almost blew up for real. Sources close to both camps said Mark felt straight disrespected, humiliated, like all his work to clean up his image just got tossed out the window. And now here comes this skinny Detroit rapper clowning him in front of millions. Mark wasn't having it, but Eminem, he didn't blink. In later interviews, he laughed it off, carrying that whole Mark who, Mark you type of energy. Privately, though, whispers say the beef came dangerously close to spilling over. One MTV staffer swore security had to step in backstage, not for M, but for Wahlberg's crew, who were heated and ready to move. These weren't just Hollywood extras, they were Boston street guys. And that night, Mark dropped the nice guy act, letting the tension speak louder than words. Eminem wasn't just shading another white artist, he was dragging out a past drenched in violence, the kind that left scars on black kids, mixed with drugs, jail time, and a record hip-hop never forgot. Coming up in Detroit's black music scene, M earned respect the hard way. So watching Mark stroll back toward hip-hop like none of that history mattered, he couldn't stomach it. Mark, meanwhile, looked at Eminem as cocky, flat-out disrespectful, and worst of all, a real threat to the polished image he worked so hard to build. This wasn't just ego, it was a head-on crash between personal histories. And the tension didn't fade. Years later, M was still firing sneaky shots, bragging how he wasn't that Marky Mark type, while Wahlberg kept his lips sealed, dodging M's name like it was poison. Industry whispers say Mark never let that day go, never forgave M for clowning him, and if they ever locked eyes again, it could have turned physical. What started as a cold shoulder became a silent war, and everybody in the streets knew when Eminem holds a grudge, it ain't quiet, it echoes loud. But to really get why M had zero respect for Mark Wahlberg, you gotta rewind. Back before Hollywood cleaned him up, before the Oscar hype, and way before he started preaching about redemption and second chances. In Boston, Mark wasn't just some rapper or actor in training, he was a street problem, straight dangerous. They didn't call him Marky Mark for the music. They called him that because of the chaos that followed him everywhere. They didn't call him Marky Mark back then. They called him straight up trouble. By just 15, Wahlberg was already knee-deep in crimes that could have had most teens locked away for years. This wasn't some story about skipping class or tagging walls. He was on record attacking people. Court docs show Wahlberg once chased a group of black school kids with rocks, hurling racial slurs, and the very next day, he harassed another group at the beach in the same hateful way, and it didn't stop there. At 16, he brutally attacked a Vietnamese man with a wooden stick, smashing his face and leaving him blind in one eye. Then later, that same day, punched another Vietnamese man. The original charge, attempted to take out, but the outcome, he pled it down and served just 45 days behind bars. Years later, Mark claimed he found God and turned his life around. He cleaned up, got his second chance, and Hollywood handed him a brand new script. White tees, good vibrations, and picture-perfect photo ops. But that violent past, it never vanished. Eminem knew every detail. And M wasn't some outsider scrolling TMZ. He came up in hip-hop, where your sins don't just disappear because you hired a stylist and a publicist. To him, Mark's whole rebrand felt like a cover-up, like a dude trying to play tough without ever paying real dues. So when M blew up and finally had the mic, he aimed subtle shots, sly bars about wannabe thugs turned actors, fake tough guys posing like they could ride hip-hop's wave just to cash in on the fame. Fans started piecing it together, and while Mark kept his lips sealed, insiders say he was fuming. This wasn't some clout chase. This was about credibility. To Eminem, hip-hop was never a costume. It was survival. He'd been jumped, clowned, battled, and tested in every Detroit club that dared to hand a white kid the mic. He didn't rock chains for fashion. He carried scars that told the story.
And it blew up enormously, and you've sort of been embraced by the mainstream. Do you feel you've finally gotten the respect that you've deserved all along?
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling it, you know.
Simplest way to look at it, he made being a white rapper okay. But beyond that, he's really redefined hip-hop.
I'm here for the fans. I'm here for everybody who understands me and relates to me, and anybody who don't can kiss my I don't care.
So watching Marky Mark get a free pass with good vibrations and Hollywood's fake street cred, that cut deep. Then Wahlberg slipped in an interview that he could have been the next Eminem if he'd stuck with rap. That line lit a fire under M. Because for him, hip-hop was never a fallback plan, it was war. And that's why this beef refused to die down. Even if Mark claimed he changed, Eminem never forgot who he really used to be. And when M doesn't forget, best believe he claps back loud. This was street cred versus street crimes. By the early 2000s, Eminem wasn't just the most talked about rapper, he was the most respected. And that crown didn't land in his lap. He wasn't born into hip-hop, he bled for it. From grimy Detroit basement battles to mic wars where the crowd could decide your fate in seconds, M showed up, went toe-to-toe, and proved himself until he earned his spot at the table. But respect in hip-hop ain't just about rhymes. It's about who's really standing next to you when the camera's cut off.
That's me. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. You know, I can't. If I let fame get the best of me, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna self-destruct, and I don't want to self-destruct.
In the simplest way to look at it, he made being a white rapper okay. But beyond that, he's really redefined hip-hop.
And he's trying to see what you gonna do. This is when I knew Eminem was real. He's like, I don't give a man. This is when I knew, I'm like, damn, Eminem is a real.
And Eminem's circle wasn't just rappers spitting bars, they came with real muscle. From D12 to 50 Cent to deep connections in Los Angeles, M had affiliations most outsiders couldn't even begin to understand. He wasn't just an artist, he was a living piece on the street chessboard, moving with strategy, power, and a target on his back. On the West Coast, Eminem was backed by people with real pull, the type of ties that made even industry heavyweights think twice before crossing him. That circle even included LA Samoan gangs, not industry suits, but real soldiers. The kind of presence that made even Death Row tread lightly. Suge Knight might have been the king of intimidation, but once those connections wrapped around M, even he knew better than to test it. Now stack that up against Mark Wahlberg. Yes, he came out of the rough streets of Dorchester, Boston, but the way he moved was different. While Eminem was battling in ciphers, clawing for respect with nothing but bars, Mark was out here throwing rocks at black school kids and hurling slurs. By 15, he wasn't building credibility in the culture. He was chasing down children, cornering them, and screaming hate in the streets. The very next day, he did it again, this time at a public beach, targeting another group, and then came the real violence that exposed just how dangerous Mark really was. Not long after, he brutally attacked a Vietnamese man with a wooden stick, striking him in the eye so severely the man was left permanently blinded. Just hours later, Mark turned around and punched another Vietnamese man in the face for no reason at all. The charge, attempted to take out. Mark only served 45 days, not redemption, just a slap on the wrist. And as time rolled on, his violent past got swept neatly under Hollywood's red carpet. Wahlberg didn't just bury his history, he tried to rebrand it, stepping out as Marky Mark, flashing abs, dancing to bubblegum beats, and acting like none of it ever happened. But hip-hop wasn't fooled. To many, it felt like an insult. A man once charged in hate crimes, now cashing in off the same culture he once disrespected. Sure, Marky Mark got airplay, but respect? Never. At best, he was barely tolerated, because in hip-hop, history doesn't vanish. It echoes loud, no matter how much money you stack. And that's exactly where Eminem and Mark collided, not just as artists, but on a moral level. While Mark was out terrorizing Boston streets, Marshall Mathers was grinding through Detroit, raised among black neighbors, schooled by hip-hop purists, and fighting his way into rooms that never wanted him to win. He battled in black ciphers, earned respect bar for bar, and got the ultimate cosign from Dr. Dre. He stood side by side with 50 Cent during the ugliest beefs, and when Suge Knight's goons made things too real, M had real-life protection from LA Samoan gangs. He wasn't Hollywood's fake version of tough. He was hip-hop's raw, unpolished version of ready for war. Eminem knew grind. He knew hustle. So when he looked at Mark Wahlberg, he didn't see a rapper, he saw an act. To him, Mark wore hip-hop like a costume, a man who once disrespected the very people who built the culture he later cashed in on. That's why this beef ran way deeper than ego. It wasn't just two artists brushing shoulders, it was two paths crashing headfirst. One man carried guilt, the other carried grit. And when their paths finally crossed, the tension went far beyond a simple MTV moment. It was about authenticity, about scars versus scripts, and everything Mark had tried so hard to bury. The beef spilled into public view, shots thrown on and off the mic. That tension between Eminem and Mark Wahlberg had been cooking for years. Cold stares backstage, slick jabs in interviews, and industry whispers that refused to die. But it wasn't until both men found themselves orbiting the same spotlight again that it finally cracked wide open. By then, Eminem was a certified rap icon, a lightning rod for controversy with nothing left to prove except one thing: he never forgets. Wahlberg, meanwhile, was riding high in Hollywood with box office smashes, a shiny reinvention, and a past he kept trying to bury. But Slim Shady doesn't bury the past. He digs it back up, and when he remembers, he makes the whole world remember too. One moment lit the fuse for real, an MTV event in the 2000s. Wahlberg was on stage introducing Eminem, and from the crowd, M cracked a slick joke about Marky Mark's old rap days. But it wasn't just clowning the Funky Bunch. It cut deeper, hinting at Mark's shady past, his desperate rebrand, and the fact that people hadn't forgotten who he used to be. That tiny jab, it traveled fast.
And back in the day of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Came, he had some Mexican. Now we from New York. You ain't never seen a with a tattoo on his forehead. He just lights the cigar, and it's the shit.
The rapper Slim Shady will kill you, and Marshall Mathers is the person like behind the whole, mask or whatever. I got an opinion, I want to voice it, I think that some people are a little bit too uptight and take things a little bit too serious.
Not long after, Eminem dropped a freestyle, unreleased but leaked, with a line that sounded way too sharp to be random. Used to be a rapper, now he acts like he ain't got a past. He didn't name drop, but the clues were obvious, and fans connected the dots instantly. Wahlberg fired back in low-key interviews, never saying M's name, but brushing off rappers who think they're tough like he wasn't bothered, though everybody knew he was. Mark leaned heavy into that clean-cut Hollywood image, but underneath, he was clearly pressed, especially when old clips of Good Vibrations started resurfacing, pushed back into the spotlight by Eminem's fans. But the real clash wasn't just about cheesy music or a messy past, it was about power. Eminem held the mic in a way Mark never could, and with deep ties in hip-hop politics, from backing 50 Cent to brushing shoulders with Suge Knight's enemies, M had influence that stretched way beyond radio spins. Mark, on the other hand, carried a different kind of history, a violent one, and Eminem knew exactly how to weaponize it, throwing shade without even saying Mark's name. This part of their beef wasn't about throwing fists, it was about reputation. And in that kind of war, Eminem knew exactly how to turn words into weapons. M wasn't scared of anybody, but Hollywood was. While Mark Wahlberg was busy scrubbing off the last traces of Marky Mark from his image, Eminem was storming into rooms that had Hollywood execs sweating bullets. He wasn't just a rapper anymore. He was a cultural disruptor, a wild card with no filter, a tongue sharper than any headline, and a memory that could end careers in just 16 bars. And Wahlberg knew it. Sure, Hollywood loved Eminem's commercial value. 8 Mile broke the box office. Lose Yourself took home an Oscar. But behind the scenes, people were walking on eggshells, terrified of what Slim Shady might say next. Eminem couldn't be predicted. He didn't kiss rings, follow rules, or hide behind fake Hollywood smiles. When Slim walked into a room, even actors with tough guy pasts like Mark suddenly got quieter, especially once M started dropping sly reminders of things folks wanted buried. Eminem never had to call Mark out by name. His fans did the heavy lifting. Online forums lit up with resurfaced court docs, mugshots, and clips from Wahlberg's old gang days. The violence wasn't rumor, it was right there in black and white. Suddenly, the whole Funky Bunch era didn't look funky anymore. It looked like a costume trying to cover scars. Wahlberg's hate crime charges came back into headlines, along with those juvenile assaults, including the day he nearly killed a Vietnamese man in a racially motivated attack that still haunts his legacy. Everything bubbled back up, and M's veiled shots only fueled the fire, sparking fresh interest in Wahlberg's ugly past. It wasn't a direct call-out, but the timing hit too perfectly to ignore. Meanwhile, Eminem was thriving, teaming up with 50 Cent in public, tearing down Benzino and Ja Rule, and even standing tall against heavyweights like Suge Knight. His ties to real street figures, from LA's Samoan crews to Detroit's gritty underground, gave him a level of credibility that made industry power players nervous. These were the same suits who survived on polished PR and sanitized images, people just like Mark, who stayed afloat by burying their truth. But while Wahlberg's camp worked overtime to hide his history behind family flicks and charity smiles, Eminem was out here playing chess, not checkers, always 10 moves ahead. Eminem's silence on Wahlberg's name only made the tension heavier, because when Slim doesn't mention you directly, that's when you know he's really thinking about you. There's power in that pause, and Mark felt it. He dodged interview questions about the beef, brushed off mentions of their MTV moment, and carefully steered clear of any room Eminem might be in. It was obvious. He wanted no smoke, not from Slim, not in the booth, not even on a Hollywood set. Because while Mark Wahlberg had to reinvent himself into a polished Hollywood heavyweight, Eminem never rebranded a thing. He stayed raw, unfiltered, and willing to say what others wouldn't dare. The real best white rapper turned actor? M already owned that title without ever needing to act like somebody else. Deep down, Wahlberg knew one thing. Eminem's deadliest weapon wasn't just fame, it was his memory. From those MTV jabs to the way he kept his distance in the industry, the Cold War between M and Mark never truly ended. By the late 2000s, the fire had cooled, at least in public. There were no diss tracks, no stage brawls, no explosive confrontations at award shows. But if you looked close, you could see it plain as day. Both men moving in the same Hollywood circles, yet always orbiting around each other. Careful, intentional, and avoiding collision at all costs. Eminem never forgot that MTV moment, back when he was just breaking into the mainstream, and Mark Wahlberg still carried the cocky swagger of his Funky Bunch days. On that stage, Mark tried to sun him, brushing M off like some goofy white boy playing dress-up in a culture he didn't belong to. The crowd laughed, but Eminem didn't. And if there's one thing about Slim Shady, it's that he never lets disrespect slide. Fast forward a few years, Eminem became the most feared lyricist alive, the guy who buried Benzino's whole magazine, crushed Ja Rule's career, and even made so-called real tough guys fall silent. He wasn't just spitting rhymes, he was building legacies and destroying reputations at the same time. And Wahlberg, he kept his mouth shut in interviews, careful not to poke the beast again. Mark dodged every mention of Eminem. If the question came up, he'd pivot fast, give a short answer, and move on. It wasn't fear like street beef, it was Hollywood politics. By then, Wahlberg had rebuilt himself. No longer Marky Mark, but a respected actor, businessman, and brand. The last thing he wanted was a viral moment of Slim Shady dragging up his criminal past or exposing his old attitudes for the world to dissect. And don't get it twisted, the culture wasn't shifting in his favor. Those same racist attacks Wahlberg once caught charges for, today they'd end his career overnight. Eminem, meanwhile, had weathered every storm. His controversies lived inside his lyrics, his apologies buried in his music. But Wahlberg's past? Still locked away in dusty archives, yellowing newsprint, and sealed records Hollywood prayed would never resurface. Wahlberg kept his distance because he knew one thing. Eminem could spark a storm with just a single bar, a single shade, even a single Instagram live, and Mark would never see it coming. This wasn't open war. It was a cold one, a silent standoff between two men who clawed their way out of rough beginnings, made it big in their own lanes, and learned that sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon of all. Hit that subscribe button to the Gossip Channel, drop a like below, and let me know your thoughts in the comments.